Hello students, welcome to the open course in Applied Language Skills. I'm very happy to invite you to this course which I can assure you will be of great use to you in every endeavor in your future. Applied Language Skills is a course that is designed to enable you to communicate better. Communication, as you all know, is one of the most vital of all human or universal activities. Whatever happens in the world happens because of communication. And the one inevitable tool that is needed for communication is language. So, as we begin our course on applied language skills and look forward to ways of improving our communication skills and using the tool of language in a better manner. Let us begin with a quotation. This is something that was said by the American statesman Daniel Webster. He said, "If all my possessions were taken from me with one exception, I would choose to keep the power of communication, for by it I would soon regain all the rest." So, that is the immense power of communication. Well, communication at its most elementary level involves the four basic skills, that is, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. These are the four activities that we engage in when we do verbal communication. So I'll just begin with a little activity for you. Coming up in the next slide will be a set of instructions for a particular task that you have to do. I want you to get ready with a pen and a piece of paper and complete the task that is given to you in the next slide in just 1 minute. So here's your task. Read the instructions and do it in just 1 minute. Well, I hope all of you have completed your task, and it would be really interesting to know how many of you did as you were properly instructed to do. Did you read the instructions fully and then get down to do your work? Or did you, as it is quite natural to do, barge into the action and try to complete it at the earliest? Well, if you had read it fully, you would have realized that you had just got to do two things. Find a piece of paper and write your name on it. You did not have to do any of the other tasks like writing the numbers 1 to 5, putting a circle beside it and multiplying 7 by 5, or going to the reverse side of the paper and writing something. None of those. The last step there told you that you just had to do 1 and 2. Find a paper and write your name on it. Well, whatever be the result of that activity, it just goes to show how important the receptive skills are. The skills of reading and listening, which we do not prioritize as much as we do the productive skills of speaking and writing. We believe that we would be judged on the basis of the way we speak and the way we write or what we write. That may be so, but that doesn't mean that the receptive skills are any less important. In fact, it is only when the receptive skills are performed properly that we will be able to excel in the productive skills. If you listen well, you will naturally be able to speak better. And if you read well, you go ahead and write better. It's only when the receptive skills are performed well that the productive skills will be excellent. Well, significant as the four basic activities are, it would be erroneous on our part to think that communication begins and ends with listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Because communication is a much more complex activity. It involves a lot of interpersonal skills. We need to negotiate our way with others, we need to influence them, we need to engage in cross cultural communication, to sell our ideas, to work as part of a team, and generally to reach out, to convey our ideas, and to receive the ideas from others. Now, when it comes to communicating at a global level, living as we do in uh, a world that is a global village today, I think we need to look specifically at the role that one particular language plays in enhancing communication. And that language, without any doubt, is English. Well, it goes without saying that communication or verbal communication can take place in the medium of any language. One can choose any language at all for communication, but for the purpose of this presentation, let me invite your attention to the very significant uh, position that English has in communication, communication at a global level, and the scope and challenges of communicating in English. To do which, let me first of all invite your attention to an image. What you see on your screen now indicates quite a lot during these days of the COVID crisis and the position that India has in the way that it has been dealing with, the pandemic. But I have chosen this image to convey the human resources that India exports to the rest of the world. We know that our population, even though we consider it as an explosion, is also one of our most precious resources. And we have been sending this resource to every corner of the globe now, and it's going to increase even more so in the coming years. But this resource would be futile at best unless it is empowered with the power of communication. And it goes without saying that in the global context, if effective communication is to take place, it would definitely take place in the most efficient manner in English. English being the global language that it is. However, even as we are aware of the significance of English as the language of communication at a global level, we are equally aware of the challenges that we, the non native speakers of English, face in using this language for communication. The major challenges being vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. It is not very difficult to reach the root cause of this problem. We realize that the difficulties we encounter in communicating in English come mainly from the way in which we acquired this language. It would be fruitful at this point to look at the difference in the ways in which we acquired our L1, our first language, which most probably would be our mother tongue, and English, the foreign language, which at best would be our second language or sometimes a third language. The first language was something that we began acquiring very early in life, even as we were inside the womb, probably. In any case, we began hearing this language the moment we were born. Listening is, in fact, the very first activity that the infant or the little baby the newborn baby engages in. And it is only after weeks and weeks and months of listening that the baby enters the stage of speaking. Speaking also does not begin at a very perfect level. Speaking is done in the trial and error method, with the baby committing a lot of mistakes, for which, however, nobody ever penalizes the little child. And it is only after a long period of trial and error and speaking with a lot of mistakes and corrections and so on that finally we reach that stage when we begin reading the language. And it is only finally that we start writing it. As a result of which, the acquiring of the first language is a very natural process. It happens even without our knowledge, so much so that it becomes a part of our system. Whereas when we began learning the foreign language, we did not begin with the basic skill of listening. In fact, the very first task that we were given when we were introduced to this language was that of writing. We were asked to write the small a's and then the big A's and so on. And very often we were penalized, we were punished for the mistakes that we made. So it was only after a lot of painful writing that we entered the stage of reading and then listening and finally speaking. So it's just an inversion of the language pyramid process, or the language pyramid, as a result of which this language, is something that we acquire or we come to touch with in the way we learn a subject. It is not, made part of our very being, the way in which the first language becomes a part of our very being, of our very personality. Well, precisely because of the ease with which we acquire our first language, its influence will be quite prominent on any later language that we acquire. This is especially true in the case of the pronunciation of the words of the second and the third languages that we acquire. The sounds of the first language, the phonemes of the first language, will be so much a part of our way of speaking that it will naturally influence the way we pronounce the sounds of the other languages that we acquire later in life. We could take any word at all to get an idea regarding the way in which the phonemes of our first language influence the way we pronounce the phonemes of the other languages. On top of that, English is a strange language with regard to its pronunciation rules. Very often, the letters do not correspond to the sounds. The letter C, for example. Look at the way in which it is pronounced in different words. In cake, in chair, in scent, and so on. It's pronounced differently in each word. In English, you have 26 letters of the alphabet, but there are 44 sounds, and therefore each letter may sometimes indicate more than one kind of sound. So each letter is pronounced differently in different contexts. And on top of that, with the large number of words imported from different parts of the world, the English language has many a word where you have letters that are not pronounced. For example, the letter B in the word debt, DEBT. The B is not pronounced in spite of the letter B being part of the spelling. So, the first step towards better pronunciation of English words would be familiarity with the sounds of English, the speech sounds or the phonemes of the English language. We know that each language has its own set of phonemes or speech sounds. Human beings can make any kind of sound, but not all those sounds are needed to speak specific languages. We have a certain number of sounds in the Malayalam language, in Hindi, for example. But English has 44 speech sounds, or it requires only 44 different kinds of sounds for its pronunciation. So I hope you remember the division of the English phonemes: 20 vowels made up of the 12 pure vowels and the 8 diphthongs, and the 24 consonant sounds. So, by way of revision, I have put up on this slide the phonetic chart for you. I hope you remember the symbols and the sounds indicated in this chart. So, it is based on this that I had given you the first exercise, a revision exercise in the previous week. I'm quite happy to note that you have not forgotten your speech sounds and that most of you did your work quite well.